Good day, my fellow nerds, and welcome back to the Corner of Remnant. I'm your host, Larissa, and I'm joined by co-host Emperial Dawn.
Yo!
And today we're discussing episode 4 of RWBY Volume 9. And it was, well, all the episodes have been great so far, but I think for us, we love these episodes when they're focusing more on character development stuff, so
Definitely.
it's exciting. But yes, hi Choso
Yes.
and Drew in the chat. If you watch on YouTube, this is streamed live on Twitch. All details will be in the description if you want to catch any future live streams. And we'll post it on YouTube 24 hours after the stream. But yeah, we're going to go through the episode and our thoughts. And what did you think of the episode in general? Dawn?
Yeah, I thought it was really good. That's all I got.
It went by
yeah,
way
no,
too quickly.
Yeah, I will say that it definitely did.
Yeah.
Like I'm not like a lot happened, but it all happened very condensedly.
Mm.
So it's a very quick watch for sure. A Cat Most Curious episode 4, which is about 18 minutes, about 16 to give or take the intro outro. But no, I definitely enjoyed it. I always love when you get these moments where characters have to just redefine themselves and just
Yes.
reestablish, hey, all the things I've gone through, you know, those meant something. You know, I always like those moments, and obviously in a world of this make, it's much easier just to throw that into like into a situation. Whereas, you know,
Yes.
sometimes it can be a bit heavy-handed. We have a character kind of have to re-explain themselves. This is a good situation where they can do it, and it makes sense within the story they're trying to tell.
Yeah, absolutely. Because there's just so much going on outside of the Ever After in Remnant. There's a lot going on at the moment, so you don't really have time to have these little moments where the characters question themselves and sort of look over like how much they've grown and things have changed over the period of time. You don't have a lot of that.
Yeah,
There's a war going on.
Yeah, and
Yeah.
you know, the writers and voice actors and stuff have made that, you know, clear in those little YouTube episode after clips they do, where they talk about how, like, you know, that was one of the main reasons they wanted to do. They wanted to get away from Remnant because they wanted to do more character stuff. But in
Yes.
in the story they crafted with Atlas and Remnant, it was a bit hard to do that.
Yeah.
So taking
Definitely.
the characters out of that situation and putting them here, yeah, it's been very refreshing and stuff, and just getting that focus, and also the animation too. I know I've mentioned other times, but just the little movements and faces and just the expressions and stuff.
Everything's
has
just
been
been
really
polished
enjoyable.
to perfection. It's just
It is
it's
very
perfect.
well polished. They've had the time to do it. So
Yes,
it's
which is
very,
really nice. Yeah.
really well polished and stuff for sure.
Yeah, I can't fault anything so far with the animation. I think it's
No, visually it's
visually
been pretty very good. And now that we're out of Atlas, we don't have that kind of cold, you know, blue whitewashing kind of temperature to everything.
yes,
Everything's a bit more vibrant and saturated and colourful and stuff as well.
That's one thing
Which
I
again,
love
I have no
about
problem with that in Atlas. Again, that made complete sense with the climate and stuff. But I just like the change stuff. I've never been a fan of snow settings in video games, and same thing goes. I liked Atlas, but visually it was gorgeous in the sense of seeing Atlas and stuff. But definitely color-wise, it was a bit of like a.
Yeah, I just love how vibrant the Ever After is, and how like it's in its own little sections. But the color, it's very warm, warm color. Rather with
Yes.
Atlas, it was very cool tones. This is more warm
Yes,
tones.
yes.
It's just and I love the forest or the garden, which we'll get a bit more into. But I love how glowy it is. It's just so pretty.
Yeah. Yeah, well, you mentioned that too, and they kind of established in this episode again how the acres work and how these squares and stuff. So I believe the garden was where we were. This is they mentioned it, but I believe the garden was where we were.
The garden is the forest because the herbalist is the inhabitant of the garden.
Okay.
They
I thought the
mentioned
cat
to,
mentioned.
yeah. The cat says this is the edge of the garden, as in that's the edge of the garden.
Yeah.
Because,
Okay. I thought. Okay.
Yeah,
Okay.
and
Okay, fair enough.
at one point too, before they meet the herbalist, they do say, "Oh, this does look like a garden," because outside his mushroom home, he's got all the little sections of
My
his
apologies.
crops and things.
I rewatched like half of the episode, so I might not have gotten to that bit of
Okay.
clarification. My apologies.
I watched it
But I do.
beforehand,
And something they did. I wanted to mention too. They've teased with little and stuff. But the herbalists more so really kind of established this idea that in this world, you get assigned a role, or you get assigned some sort of purpose, and that is what keeps the which to be fair isn't unrealistic to our world or Remnant, right? Like, you get a job or you get like a purpose, and you do that, and it makes the whole cogs in the wheel turn around. But it feels like almost very, very, again, like this is a story. This world is itself a story, and if something deviates from it, the world alters, the world fixes it almost.
Yeah.
Again, like, I don't know if that's why the herbalist disappeared at the end of the episode, but again, it's that idea that, like, when something is wrong or something's different, the world almost reacts to it to kind of correct itself. I feel like at least that's what I'm feeling the vibe might be going for, where the story might be trying to tell us what this world is.
Yeah.
Or at the very least, it's very much more an idea of, like, once you get assigned a role, like, I'm always curious if, like, is it almost like a play, like you get assigned a role? Is it a cog in the machine you just get assigned a part to do? Like, I feel like they're really leaning into that, and I'm curious what that's going to resolve into in terms of what this world is.
Yeah, we've had a lot of hints of it. Little has said themselves that they're too young at the moment, so they haven't been assigned their role in their little village and town. But it does seem to fit like the whole area. Everyone's got a role. Like the herbalist says, we all have our titles, our roles to play. And
but even then, you mentioned there about Little. What if that isn't even, like, what if, like, the idea of, like, you can get assigned anything in this world, just depending on what the world chooses for you? What if, just on top of my head, what if, like, Little doesn't have to be a mouse in a village? What if the world chooses it and Little just becomes something else? What if what if Little just gets turned into a knight, and then Little's just a knight now for the prince? Like, I'm just saying, I feel like in a world like this, it might not be as simple as just Little hasn't been assigned her role within the village. I think Little hasn't been assigned the role in the world, and that could be literally anything. It's magic. It could be assigned anything,
Yes.
And they mentioned too, not doing your role. I think this is what the herbalist said. Not doing your role is why we have a prince instead of a king.
Yes. Yeah. I was curious about that. How a king winds up a prince. Yeah.
Yeah. For not doing your role, or not knowing your role,
not
knowing your
having an understanding of what your role and title is. Yeah.
Which I assume that ties into Alex and the king and why it's a prince. Or I get those could be separate.
I think we'll find out as we go. But yeah, it was interesting how he just threw that little line in there. How a king winds up a prince. I'm like, oh, okay. Well, we do know there was a king, and now there's just a prince. So, yes.
Yes, but overall, it was a really good episode, really character focused and stuff, and
I think the
really
last
emotional and stuff.
Scenes from the trailer, I think. Oh no, actually no, the trailer there was a bridge. We haven't seen that yet.
Yeah, there's the bridge. There's also the Ruby. Yeah, Penny's reflection in Penny's sword.
So that
seen.
could
I
have
still
been
think there's stuff.
Yeah, that could have been a hint from when we had Penny's blade, but maybe she comes across
It's
another
possibly,
one.
but it's one of those things. Again, they could have made it for the trailer. That's totally possible. But the floor was different. The reflection was different. I feel like it was a separate scene, but again, it could have been a custom scene. Again, they had the if there's any season where they had the time to make custom stuff for the trailer for the volume, it is this volume.
Yeah, definitely.
And that's a very common thing in most trailers, in most other mediums, these days. So it's very possible. But there's also stuff with the knight and stuff we saw as well in the trailer that we haven't gotten to yet. Although we did get like not a first mention, but Weiss mentioned the rusted knight and mentioned the handsome rusted knight, handsome the rusted knight's meant to be,
and
which
the blacksmith,
again
I think,
just ties.
As well, maybe it was the other one. I think it was the blacksmith. Wasn't it?
Carpenter. I think she said
Carpenter. Yeah, I didn't note it down in my notes. Yeah, Carpenter.
Which wasn't mentioned in Alex's story, I don't believe. But yeah, as far as we know, the blacksmith, carpenter, and the rusted knight are one and the same.
Oh no, I think they're different people.
They're different? Oh, yeah, sorry. My apologies, sorry, because the rusted knight's probably Jean. Right, sorry.
Not necessarily. But
not
yeah.
necessarily, but the armor is the same, just the helmet that's new.
It's because...
so it'll be interesting to see.
Yeah, because Weiss was saying that, why couldn't we have the carpenter or the rusted knight? That one was I think one was kind and the other one was handsome, something like that.
Yeah.
She said so. Yeah.
Which again ties into the early romantic plots between Weiss and John, if that has any significance and stuff here. And we know the Ever After stuff has been teased for a while, so I'm curious.
Yeah. Well, I think the Rooster Knight is already an entity that was in Alex's story, so whether or not
I understand that, but the visual similarities between John and the Rusted Knight, I don't think can be ignored. There's a significance there.
Yeah.
Even if it's just a coincidence, they get mistaken for one another or something like that. But I definitely, and again, the fact that we haven't seen John yet, I think there's proof that he has some role or purpose in this world.
Yeah.
You know, because he had no one else, so he might have just adapted to the world because he had no one else to kind of help and stuff. So I'm curious, and again too with that, again it was John and Weiss that were leaving when they got attacked and they fell. So
yeah,
I know Weiss and John hasn't been a planted or seeded thing in a long time, but Ever After was like a Volume 2 idea. John and Weiss has been a thing through Volume 1 through 3, hasn't been touched since then. I'm just saying, it'd be cool if that was some long... And I'm not saying that in a shipping sense, I'm just saying the two characters have a connection from the early days of RWBY. So if the Knight and Weiss mentioning the Knight here, I just think is a possibly cool tie-in to John's story, whatever that is going forward.
Yes.
At least that's what I thought when she said that.
Just 1 second, I've got the dogs here.
Yeah, no worries.
Chris? Yeah? Can you call Holly? She wants to play.
Holly, come here.
Sorry.
All good. So we are back to the start of the episode, and we had, RWBY and the cat kind of conversing with one another, asking, what do I call you? Are you the cat? Are you the curious? And kind of, it's like, oh yeah, so I am a cat.
Curious.
A cat most curious.
I love the cat. And I love how it talks and riddles and rhymes. It's so cool.
I love too that Weiss is mentioning how, like, man, the tree's even farther away than usual. And Yang's like, well, yeah, that's because we're 6 inches tall. And and Weiss is like, it could be both. I mean, I really like not Weiss's writing this volume a lot. As the straight man, and kind of like she's like, the logical one. Mm-hmm. And she has to kind of deal with everyone else's beliefs and ideas about the world and stuff.
Yes.
But then of course RWBY mentions Alex, and that obviously perks the curious cat's interest. I'm trying to think if they've mentioned Alex to anyone else. They've also mentioned the human thing, which has obviously piqued a lot of characters in the world interest. I can't remember if they've mentioned Alex by name to anyone else yet. Obviously they've mentioned it to themselves.
I don't think they mentioned it to the prince. No,
I don't think so. I don't know who else they would have. But obviously, and it's interesting too because, we've all, and I think it's very poetic too that the idea that, Alex is this fairy tale character we've all heard of, and then we go into this world and we're slowly realizing, okay, either if Alex did return and she wrote a story about herself, obviously she's lying and she's kind of making up stuff to make it sound better, because in this world it seems like she was a problem, and even Yang obviously believes that she was a bad person in the book, her interpretation of it. And obviously, then the cat talking about how Alex was quite blinded in her personality. She was just looking what was ahead of her. She didn't really know much about.
She was worried about trivial matters.
Remnant stuff. Yeah. And I mean, it's also interesting too. It's also a possibility, and again, this is a stretch considering the Curious Cat mentioned that Alex didn't know anything about the origins of Remnant, which, to be fair, no one did prior to RWBY. But it'd be interesting if Alex didn't actually originally come from Remnant. What if Alex came from somewhere else to the Ever After, then ended up in Remnant, told her story, etc., etc. But again, Alex still could be here. Alex could be the blacksmith for all we know, because again, the blacksmith's been silhouetted. That's something that has to be something significant.
Yeah.
Again, so many.
There's so many different things. Yes.
Or a mess. A good mess, but a mess.
Yes.
And then, trying their best to kind of coerce. Yeah, it's like we can lead the cat and stuff. And I love the scroll. Always like when they, just in general, bring scrolls, because I think scrolls is such a cool little neat thing at the start of the show. Yes. And they kind of, they come up again in Volume 7 when they got new scrolls and stuff, and checking aura levels in Volume 8. That was all cool. So like showing off the scroll to the cat to kind of was really interesting. Which also, it doesn't necessarily guarantee, but probably does credence to Alex being much older.
Yeah.
Not that was in question, but obviously the cat not seeing a scroll before would imply that Alex probably didn't have one, which
no, she probably didn't.
Does make all the sense in the world, but it's just clarification, I suppose.
Well, definitely time has passed and she was gone, so it's very possible that when she did come to the Ever After, it was possibly hundreds of years or
and that would make sense
before...
with her aesthetic for sure.
Yes, yeah.
She definitely has an older aesthetic. Well, I say that, but then again, her aesthetic does match the stepsisters. I'd probably say it's like the closest comparison, even though they had an old Victorian style, which seems like early Atlas was that, like that kind of Industrial Revolution style, like clothing, which makes a lot of sense considering what Atlas ended up becoming. So I guess that style still has its place in Atlas.
Yeah.
Amongst the rich crowd, still has that kind of old school, at least 10 years ago when Cinder was that age. I guess it could be it's out of fashion now because Atlas is gone, so it doesn't matter. But I'm really curious cat indeed about that. Which again, the cat too is so meta. Obviously, being the curious cat.
Yeah.
And it's very much the representation of the fandom, which I find so funny because
yes, about CL. The CL girl from the Battle Festival. I thought that was so funny.
And it's one of those things where there are so many people who watch this who will not even know what the hell the cat's talking about. Like, there are some people who've watched RWBY who probably have no idea who CL is. Just like complete 2-episode character that no one...
like, oh yeah, that character from Volume 3. Yeah, we didn't get to see him when we went to Atlas. No. Wasn't she Penny's friend?
It's cool kind of just like, like the writers are like, yes, we know that was a character, that was a thing, but it just wasn't in the works for the story we wanted to tell now.
Yes.
Now, so, but that was always a funny little jab by the show and stuff. Which is like the show that is very willing to do that, it's like, for sure. I'm trying to think of the other questions.
You'll talk,
Oscar and Ozpin, that's another funny one. Especially to RWBY, which would you argue, if that's the implication, the most would probably affect RWBY.
Yes.
If shippers are to be believed. But that's very funny. RWBY's just like at this point, it's like, oh, okay, what have I got myself into now?
Like, oh my god! And then he's talking about the two brothers, and then later,
which
of course,
is interesting.
about Salem.
That would relatively imply that they're not a factor here, or at least not a known factor here.
Yeah.
Two brothers, because he didn't seem to, it's not like it's like, oh yes, the two brothers, we have two brothers, kind of thing, which. We have some visual ideas in the intro and when we saw the Jabberwocker and Neo, the idea of gold and purple again. So
yes,
but again, they also could maybe be in more of a hidden role in this world compared to the more open view they had in Remnant originally.
Yes.
Or I guess, should we call that Remnant? Because it wasn't Remnant until they left. Remnant of an Experiment. I don't know. Whatever the world was they called before. Salem basically I would assume Salem recalled the world Remnant after what the god said. I'd assume that's probably a fair assumption.
Yeah,
to say Remnant gets its name from Salem.
Maybe, I don't know. Yeah.
Obviously, it comes from what the god said when they left, but obviously only Salem heard that. So
it could have been in writings and stuff because they've their previous inhabitants would have had some sort of impact on the world. So
I guess so. I guess to me. I guess from the fandom perspective, the name Remnant comes from the God of Light saying that this world is a remnant of what it once was. It was a beautiful experiment. Now it is that's where the name comes from in our minds.
Yeah.
So I would assume that the world wasn't called Remnant by the gods before that.
No. Yeah. It's just something that they took on.
I suppose so.
Yeah.
And then I guess making fun of Kara, I guess, was the point there with the Curious Cat saying, some of the voice acting was questionable.
Yeah.
And then going right to Weiss. I guess that was the implication there, which is like, ow. I mean, sure, Kara was probably the least experienced voice actress.
Yeah. I didn't think of it from that point of view, but yes, could be.
It was just a weird, of all this, because everything they mentioned there with Oscar and Ozpin, CL and stuff, and then to mention that, it's like, ooh, shots fired. Ouch. Yes. Again, I could be misinterpreting it too.
Yeah. And that's when they reach the edge of the little section, and the cat also talks about how each acre is made for its inhabitants and their roles, which we sort of mentioned briefly earlier.
We touched on earlier, yeah. So again, is it like a cog in the machine, or is it kind of like a character in a play? you know, in terms of the roles they have. Is this world a story, or is it like a machine that has to keep functioning? Again, to take the more literal, again, in this world, I feel like it's fair to take more literal interpretations of what the characters are saying rather than metaphorically. It's just a beautifully weird place, this is.
It is, yeah.
But
the cat talks about the Grogut Cafe, which they want to make to so the other girls can be back to their normal size again. But he does mention something about his best friends are 6 inches tall. I thought that was funny. I'm like, I wonder if we get to meet any other characters that are 6 inches tall.
Yeah. Or maybe he's just kind of implying that like his favorite thing to hunt is mice.
Oh well, yeah.
Something like that. One of the I don't, it could be either. I don't know that. But then again, like, you know, and again they're mentioning like, oh, you know, we want to get back to a normal size, and the cat's like, it's like, really? Of all the things you told me, that's what you're concerned about, not Salem?
You know, how many relics does she have again that she needs for the end of the world?
Destroy the world. And, yeah.
Poor Ruby.
I remember seeing, I saw a little bit of discourse for this episode. You know, one of them was filler, which is dumb, stupid. That's dumb. But the other one, which I've seen and has been brought up for a while, and I always like talking about it, is the idea of like, you know, they signed up to be huntresses.
Yes.
Which in itself was a lifelong dedication, and they'll talk about this in Volume 2 as well, about in Glenn. You know, it's a lifelong dedication, and, you know, realistically, not many huntsmen, huntresses get to retire. Obviously, they're kids, so they're not really thinking about that at that point, obviously. But the idea of, like, again, why is Salem being undefeatable so impactful to our characters when realistically the Grimm is a never-ending undefeatable threat anyway?
Yeah.
Now, the difference is obviously is that, well, sure, the Grimm will last forever, but you can at least push them back, you at least keep them at bay.
Yeah, you can.
You can't really, you know, you can kill them and more will come. With Salem, you can't stop her. So if she just wants to do something, she can't really be... I mean, sure, she has been, you know...
You can
could argue that she was stopped at Atlas, but again, that was a one-of-a-kind, 100-year-in-the-making nuclear cane explosion. And it only kept her down for about an hour or two. You know, it wasn't that long.
Yeah, it wasn't too long, no. Yeah, so they can sort of, slow her down a bit, but at the end of the day,
so
she's invincible. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's that, you know, and it's one of those things that keeps coming up over and over again. Obviously, we have the series of Ruby and the Silver Eyes. But again, with the Hound, that obviously questions it, because obviously Salem seems to be more comfortable around Silver-Eyed Warriors than maybe she was at one point, because she was hunting them as well.
Yeah.
Which again could be for her own safety. But again, if this goes back to the idea of that Salem wants to destroy the world for her own selfish reasons, because she wants to move on.
Yep.
Then it wouldn't make sense that she would be hunting Silver-Eyed Warriors, other than unless it was just because they were stopping her plans because they would hunt Grimm.
Yeah.
So it's more questions, more curiosities.
Yeah.
Very curious.
Well,
but obviously, again, that question again hits Ruby, and it's like...
Yes, I really like her reaction to that. It just really shows it's just... Yeah, that's what she's thinking.
And then Yang,
you know...
Yang trying to support her as well, and it's just...
And then the cat was missing again. I love how Yang's always like, the cat's gone. And
it's like, and Little's like, oh, it caught a bug. It's like, thanks for telling us that now.
It was a very interesting bug. And then we had the herbalist. Which we see in the intro, and a little bit in the trailer, so it was cool to see them.
I got to mention again too, just before that, is I'm just Weiss, so good. The animations and her writing this volume has been really good and stuff. Like,
which is great.
Rusted Night and like Attention Span of a Goldfish. There's a goldfish. You could find a goldfish in one of those ponds. And it's like, oh. And also going back to before, and also she mentioned earlier that like is this the curious cat or is this the annoying cat?
Yes.
And Yang trying to support her, which I love too. People comparing that to Volume 2 when Yang just absolutely no-sells her joke, pun, after they fight Neo. So like, it's good like how the characters have come and changed since then. So the herbalist, as you mentioned, and I remember we obviously saw the eyes and stuff in the trailer and stuff. And I didn't think that was the herbalist.
No, me neither. I didn't realize it was the same thing. Yeah.
Yeah, I thought that was maybe going to be how we introduced the cat. like just from the
Yes,
trailer and
just
stuff.
from the trailer, yeah, definitely. Yeah.
And I love RWBY's reaction to like, I'm getting really tired of that question.
Yeah,
It's
what
like,
are you? How many questions? He's like, oh, that.
yeah, I love the design of the herbalist.
Yeah, he's really cool.
Yeah,
And
I thought. Go ahead.
I was gonna say I really love the mushroom house. The detail in it, it's so
Yes.
cool. Yes.
I thought in the intro that the herbalist was going to be more of a. Not to say he wasn't, because he was a bit of a sinister character, really. But I definitely didn't think he'd be as much of this like kind of just peaceful kind of character, and like it's more like I didn't think we are going to get like conversations and dialogue with this character. I thought this would be more like more of an enemy character. But you know, and also really like the crest he wears on his chest. It's kind of similar to Jean's emblem, the double moons, which is also similar to Salem's family crest. That's a whole other thing, and stuff as well. So I'm curious what the significance of that is, or if it's just meant to be a sun and a moon, which is probably what it is.
Yeah.
But yeah.
And he's I just love his little house with all the little details in it. But it seems like his role is someone who is the herbalist, and he helps people along in their journey. And helps them sort of like reaffirm who they are and what their role is to play. Is sort of what I got out of him. And,
which again I feel like goes to the idea of this world in itself being a story. It's a play. It's when you go through this world, you go through this order of things, and this is the NPC that is the only purpose in this world is to help the main character going through it.
Yeah.
But obviously, again, this is obviously, you know. Let's say this is the second time that this play is going through, and some of these characters are aware this is the second time that they're going through. So it's a bit different, you know, like the herbalist is a bit more antagonistic, is a bit more pushing the buttons than, say, he might have been of Alex, perhaps.
Yeah.
He's a bit more like, again, like, okay, your huntresses, great. What's a huntress? What do you mean you don't know? It's like, you know, I can't help you unless you know what you are and you know what you do, and that's when they obviously get taken into the back room.
I do also like that RWBY didn't say they were humans this time, which I thought was good, because they've realised that it's a bit of a touchy subject in this world. So instead of saying that we're humans, then they say
except for with and the only people so far that have not known who humans are were the mice, which I'm curious if that has any significance, because RWBY mentioned that.
No, that's right. Whereas the
Little didn't have much of a reaction, but again, that Little was probably. As far as Little's probably after the original Alex story.
Yeah.
If this world actually has a timeline.
Yeah.
I guess it does, but that's another thing confusingly in itself.
So, yeah.
So after Alex, so that's why Little probably has no idea what a human is, because she wasn't. They weren't there during Alex's story.
Yeah.
Which again, I'd imagine maybe most of the mice weren't, because if they live like real mice, I don't think mice live particularly long.
No,
so
they
that
don't. Yeah,
also makes sense.
Yes.
That maybe the mice in general, because they're a younger living population, that they all existed after Alex. The mice were mentioned in the book.
They were.
Blake mentioned the mice, so this just must be the next generation of mice who weren't there for Alex, whereas all the other characters probably have been around since Alex.
I don't know. Well, Weiss didn't say, or Blake didn't say about the herbalist being in the story either. So they seem to be aware of him. But it's interesting that possibly Alex didn't come across him. Maybe she didn't need to. But,
which is interesting, because then that would go against the idea that this is his second time around. I guess that would go against that notion.
Yeah, unless it could be that they haven't come across the herbalist. Yeah.
And it's also possible that Alex is not the only human who's been here. I guess it's also a possibility. Alex is simply the only person who got back.
Yeah, or at least wrote about
the story.
What happened. Yeah.
Yeah, but then again, like that might not even be the case. Like what if time works differently here, and she wrote her story and she's here, and that story somehow got to Remnant because time and.
No, I could feel like she did leave, but whether or not maybe she managed to come back, who knows? Yeah.
Yeah, because the idea, at least in our world, is that Alex was escaping something, a choice or decision, escaping her purpose, or for example, came to this world somehow, and then I think, I'm trying to remember the original story that Ozpin mentions, And I think she gets back, but she was a different
She was
person?
different person, yeah.
Yeah. So the idea is almost like she was avoiding a choice, she was avoiding a decision. She went to the Ever After. That the Ever After made her confront it.
Yeah.
And then she came back, but perhaps even more drastic than she would have if she had just listened to made the decision in the first place. Which again leads credence to the idea that this world is again just it's just for RWBY. I don't know why just for RWBY, but let's just say for RWBY to deal with all of her stuff. It's just taking its same form as the one that Alex took because they maybe went through similar situations and.
Well, I think how they've come to the Ever After is very different from Alex, I think, and their purpose is very different, yeah.
Of course, but how? How did Alex get here?
Yeah, well, that's it. We don't know.
I mean, again, the story is the girl who fell through the world, but is that to imply there's a portal somewhere in Remnant? I mean, I guess they have to come back somehow.
Yeah, well, that's it. They do, yeah. As well, so we're wondering if they might end up where one of the relics are to get back. Mm.
Yeah. I'm just trying to think if there's anywhere in Remnant on the map that is significant enough, not including the Dragon Island, because I think that's just Salem's domain. It could be a Salem's domain, but I'm going to say away from that.
Yeah.
Vital? We know Vital is important, but we don't really know why, other than just being the peace treaty grounds. But why Vital? It's an island in the middle of Remnant. Okay, sure, that's a peaceful location. Okay.
Yeah. We don't know of any giant trees.
No. Menagerie is a weird place with a desert that's hard to get to, so maybe there's a portal at the end of the desert because no one's gotten to the middle of the desert of Menagerie. Maybe, but then why would the king send everyone to Menagerie if they want to keep that thing a secret, I'd assume? Yeah. Assuming Ozpin knows of all this, of course.
Yeah, I don't know.
Fountain of Creation, maybe, but we saw Salem. That was just a puddle. It wasn't a portal.
Yeah.
I don't know. There's a few other places. Like, there's a string of islands in Remnant that doesn't have any significance, but I don't know. Very theory crafty this episode. I apologize if I'm rambling for theory crafting.
I do like. What the herbalist says, we all have our titles, our roles to play, but in order to help you become whatever it is you need to become, you really should have a better understanding of what you are, and that kind of leads into him going to the back room and doing the whole thing with the smoke. So he's trying to help them they seem to be a little bit lost on, they believe themselves to be huntresses, and especially RWBY herself not quite believing in that, and that is what she is and what she's meant to be.
Yeah, this character and this scene really add credence to one of my OCs, which has a drug-related inspiration. So, cool to know that this is a thing in Remnant, or Ever After, in the world. Kind of weird. Anyway, smoking. Weird stuff. But also, it's one of those things where it's a very weird tone shift for RWBY to go into. Yeah. Recreational drug use implications. But also, again, this is Texas and America where most of it's legal now, unless you live in Canberra in Australia. You can't do that. But if you want, go to Canberra. I think that's correct. Pretty sure you can do it in Canberra. Anyway, so yeah, it was definitely one of those things where it's like, oh, this is where we're going with this. Okay, cool, let's do it. Yeah. Yeah, and like you said, like all of our titles, all of our roles, and he was trying to just help them, but then obviously when RWBY couldn't give him a proper answer, takes them into the other room. It's like, okay, well then I'll have to go to the drastic measure. Yeah. Because it is my role, it is my purpose to make sure you need the help you get. Yeah. And it's like, I don't want to do this, but it's my role to make sure you know what you're doing.
I've got a job to do.
Which directly conflicts, which makes sense because it's the Cheshire Cat, but completely goes against what the cat, because obviously the herbalist is just trying to do its role. It's just trying to help the cat do what the herbalist is meant to do. Yes. But the cat's like, no, trying to stop them. Yep. Which is, I guess, the idea the same as the prince. Like, the prince is meant to win and meant to stop them, but the cat helps them escape. Yep. So it's almost like the cat is the one disturbing the story, not the people.
Yeah, possibly.
Which is interesting.
But yeah, because it was like Yang, Blake, and Weiss that all were like that they're very confident in that they want to be who they are now. They don't want to go back to what they were originally, and I really love that.
I also really like that those three characters, Weiss, Blake, and Yang's, all of their visions and illusions, let's say, were all very like almost illogical. Like what they were asking, what they were talking about was almost like, of course You know, it's almost like it's like what are you saying? What are you none like it's like yes, you're trying to coerce, that was the right word I was looking for, into like, you know, going back to the way I was, and, you know, like not you know, again pulling, which is, I almost feel like they could have been more of a tie into Raven here, because like the whole idea of, like, you know, just ignoring the problems in front of you and just go back to where everything made sense for you. You know, 'cause that's what Raven did. That's arguably what Blake tried to do. Well, I guess Blake tried to escape what she knew. I guess there's a difference there. You know, but everything, like, you know, you can just get your arm back and you can go back to being normal if you want. You know, it's that's it. And I guess in this world it probably is that simple. If you just think, like, yeah, I'm sure they could probably manifest things in this world to change things once they understand what the world is.
Yes.
You know, you can get your arm back and you can just go back to being the way you're meant to be, or, you know, you can just be a human or a cat. You know, you don't have to be this bridge. You don't have to be this both thing. Or, you know, Weiss is like, you know, Weiss is probably the only one that made more logical sense in terms of what the old Weiss was saying. But Yang's and Blake's was just, like, weird for the sake of being weird, which is why their reactions are so, like, so obviously defiant, because what you're saying doesn't make sense. Well, Weiss was more stronger because... Sorry, no, go ahead.
I was going to say, I feel like with Yang's, though, was also strong, though, because the fact, you know, to be whole again, to have both of your arms, you know, that sort of thing.
I'm not saying they didn't have merit or they didn't make sense. They definitely did.
Yeah.
I guess for me, I remember watching this episode and thinking that I wish this didn't all happen in one episode. And what I mean by that is I would have liked Blake and Yang's, like, this situation to be in one episode where they can kind of deal with themselves and they can kind of deal with that. But I feel like for Weiss and RWBY, theirs was a bit more significant.
Yeah. And
that's just my interpretation. Again, feel free to disagree with me. But Weiss's whole character has been mirrors, reflections, looking at herself. More than, like, yes, now, and obviously Blake with her shadows and her past makes sense with her looking back at herself.
Yes.
And Yang, obviously, two sides of the same whole. She has her broken self, which is stronger, and her whole self, which was weaker, and, you know, her kind of becoming one in both of those two people. But
I feel
Weiss's
like...
whole thing...
Oh, I was just going to say, I feel like with these two, that the other selves were trying to convince them to go back to how they were, while with RWBY's was more trying to... trying to uplift her and, you know, get her thinking, whereas the other three were like, oh, go back to how you were, you know.
Of course.
Yeah.
I guess what I'm saying is that I would have liked Blake and Yang's to have a focus, because I feel like Blake and Yang's were telling a similar story and a similar ideal.
Yeah.
Whereas I feel like Weiss's should have been a bit more significant because of how much reflections and that's a part of her character. Her one should have... I would have liked hers to have been isolated and a bit separate from those two.
Yeah.
And with RWBY's as well, but I can also see putting RWBY's and Weiss's together, because they're also the complete opposite as well. Because, like you said, and that's a great point too. Again, that's just a little, like, if I had weird creative control, I probably would have just had those somehow. It wouldn't make sense because you wouldn't run into another herbalist and to do that again, but just maybe had those two and those two a bit more separate rather than 3 to 1.
Yeah, maybe.
I would have probably done 2, 1, 1 just to get, because I feel like Weiss's could have been, it was. I think Weiss's was probably the best in terms of, like, her reactions and her struggle. But again, because that's so important, I would have liked it to have not been just lumped in with Blake and Yang's.
Yeah.
I liked a bit more separation between those 3 moments.
I think...
But RWBY's was Sorry.
No, I was just I think too, the comparison, like, it just showed that Weiss, Blake, and Yang are pretty, they want to be a huntress, they see that as 100%. Their purpose and everything, and I feel like that was just comparing to RWBY's, where RWBY's like, I don't know what to do. I don't know where to go from, you know, from
and that's
here.
the thing too, like, their threes was almost, you know, bizarre and manipulative and blind, and so that way our characters could go, like, okay, our character arcs have been completed. We know that what you're saying is wrong, doesn't make sense. We know who we are now. We are stronger for it, etc., etc. And again, just kind of, like I said, what I love is just that re-establishment of just, like, let's just... I always like every now and then just to re-establish what we've been through, just because it helps just remind and get your ideas thinking of where these characters are. Whereas RWBY's was nothing like that at all. RWBY's was much more... I'd argue probably more manipulative, but just more like... It was more believable. It was more understandable. I can understand why, even with no context at all to any of these characters, their visions barely made sense. It completely understands why our characters would just ignore them and disagree with them and
Yep.
be strong in where they are. A lot of what Ruby saying to herself, again, out of context,
Yep.
is the most believable of, like, looking at yourself and Ruby kind of taunting and teasing and kind of being like, you know, so, do you become the huntress you always wanted to be? Why not? You know,
think,
like, yeah, and just a lot more, yeah.
Yeah, it reminds me like back
sense.
in Volume 2, how Yang was saying Ruby always had a vision of what she wanted to be. She wanted to be a huntress. That's what she always wanted to be since she was younger. And now I get to the point where, like, Ruby's questioning whether being a huntress is actually what she wants to be, if that's the right path for her. And how she responds to the other Ruby saying, you know, life isn't a fairy tale.
Yeah, and that's a great point too. Like, again, like, Ruby always had such a childish view of this. And again, ties
huntress,
into
like
even
if read in the books, yeah,
and again, and the thing is too, I like the parallel, well, not the parallel, but I like the idea too that even if Salem wasn't a factor here, I could still see Ruby going through the same thing because again, the Grimm were always going to be an endless, never-ending threat. Becoming a huntress is a lifelong commitment, and obviously Ruby was the most childish. Granted, again, the other three didn't know quite what they were getting into either. Like Blake did it because it was her only other option. You know. Granted, she wanted to be like Ruby, the fairy tale, kind of like the hero in the books, and it was kind of like her inspiration because that was the only good in her life with the fairy tales she used to read. So that's why huntsmen and hunters were the most noble warriors in the world, is what she said. So she wanted to do the complete opposite of what she felt like she had done.
Yeah.
You know, Yang was just following in her family footsteps and just kind of wanted a life of adventure. So Yang also too was kind of didn't know what she was getting into because she was the one who was kind of the most nonchalant about it. It's like, oh, I'll be a huntress because that sounds fun.
Yep.
You know, Weiss did it also like Blake just as an escape. It was her excuse to get away from her family.
Yeah. Exactly.
Which is a cool parallel to see that.
Yeah.
They all have very four intertwined and similar reasons for being a huntress, but all very different at the same time. But they all have little threads that connect to each other, like fairy tales and escapism and all that kind of stuff that all kind of tie in. But yeah, and again, and Ruby's finally in the situation where she's thinking back, or being told, I guess, in this case, that, you know, like, so, you know, do you know what to do?
Yeah.
Are you the hero? Is everything making sense to you, like all those heroes in the book that you read? And she's like, no, it's not, because I've come to this face of this person who
everything
is unstoppable
depends on her.
And she feels like the weight is stopped on her, which is also not that it's been addressed at all. I think also ties into a strong mental idea, the fact that her silver eyes has almost like a burden for her as well.
Yep.
Because she feels as a silver-eyed warrior, it's even more than the fairy tales in the book, because she never even heard of the silver-eyed warriors until Crow told about her.
Yeah.
Told her about them. So it's even more of a burden where she thinks herself she has to be this. And Maria as well didn't help with this either. I mean, not intentionally, obviously, but this idea of, like, she even has this more of a burden onto her, and I'm curious if that will ever be brought up. Obviously, the silver eyes have to be brought up at some point again.
Yes.
Like, in a story-significant manner. Assumingly with Salem, so I'm curious if she'll address that, whenever that comes up, whether that's this volume or when we're back in Remnant. But the idea of the silver eyes being a burden, because I always love seeing this. There's a comic strip. I don't know who the artist is, and I apologize, but I love seeing this comic strip of it's Ty and Summer just after Ruby's born, and it shows their sadness when they realize Ruby had silver eyes.
Silver eyes, yeah.
And like the grief they had, even though it was such a happy moment for them. So,
I remember seeing that. Yeah.
I always love thinking back to that comic in that regard.
Yeah. And like it says that like the world depends on you and against an invisible monster who took your mother. I thought that was a very key line. And then they're like,
100%.
Yeah, and be
and
whoever
like
you want to be, and you don't have to be Ruby Rose. Yeah, and that's when the cat interrupted.
The whole world's depending on you. Your friends are depending on you. To defeat this invincible monster that took your mother from you, and it's like, how can you do that in one sense? How can you do it at all? But then also, like, why does it have to be me? Why am I the one? Yes, I wanted this life. I wanted to be in this, but why her?
Yes.
I'm curious if that's going through her mind, like,
Yeah, and I found like through with this, it was kind of a bit of a test. And which Weiss, Blake and Lang, of course, passed, where Ruby didn't, as far as we know. And that's when I found it interesting that when the cat interrupts, they specifically say, get away from her. Not them, but her. So I'm wondering maybe if the cat could sense that RWBY was the most in trouble at that point under Herb's spell.
Yeah, so
Yeah.
I'm really curious. I'm curious, and every time I say that,
Curious cat. Curious cat.
Yeah, I am definitely curious. Again, like, what is the cat's purpose here?
Yes,
Obviously,
what is its role?
Saving from the prince, saving from Herb. Now, I assume then we'll probably also save from the knight and the carpenter blacksmith. So I'm just like, why?
Yeah, what is the cat's purpose
in
the story?
Yeah, is it RWBY's purpose or is it the cat's purpose? I almost want to think it's the cat. The cat's doing something for itself, or the cat's doing something to its own end. You know, RWBY is just another pawn in whatever the cat's doing. Like I don't think RWBY needs to have significance in this world. You know, this isn't Remnant. She doesn't need to be the savior in the world and stuff like that. I think she can just be a piece moving through the world. But again, what's the cat trying to do?
I feel like the cat also, in that moment too, is becoming a bit protective of them as well. It's trying to help them through this, and like the cat didn't have to stop what Herb was doing either, but
but why?
Yeah, but why exactly? Why?
I don't think it's just out of the cat's kind heart. You know, I mean, hell, the cat keeps giving piece of its kind heart to the prince, and now giving more of its kind heart to Herb.
Yeah.
So, clearly, again, I've said it before. This cat is a manipulator. Clearly, this cat has its own role in this world, or its own agency in this world. I think is a better way to put it. Yeah. More than the story of the rest of the world. But to what end? Does the cat want to escape? Does
the cat didn't want to go back to the tree, saying it's no sense in seeing a sight seen. I love that line too.
Yeah, true.
But because
but again, is that the cat just kind of playing them along? Is the cat just trying to egg them on or something? Like, I don't know.
Yeah, we know
I said that
cat
like
helped
so times this
Alex,
episode,
but we don't know to what extent. And
to what extent? And again, and I say that too because in the book, in the intro with the books, the cat only pops up in the town, in the intro. Whereas the cat didn't show up in the town in the intro. In the show, the cat showed up at the castle.
Yes.
You know?
Though it was part of the same acre, but it wasn't.
Sure, but in terms of the pages of the book, there was a separate page for the auction and a separate page for the castle, and the cat in the intro, I think, only appears in the auction part of the intro, which it didn't in the actual show. Now, that could just be creative, fun in the intro.
Yeah, maybe.
But I'm curious if the idea of like the cat helps in the garden in the auction section with Alex initially, if that's what's meant to apply. I still don't think we'll actually. I still believe we won't see. I don't think Alex is a factor in the show. I think Alex is just the phantom they're following. It's just the path they're going. I don't think we'll actually meet Alex. I don't think Alex is still here. And then
Herb vanished into the ground.
Which again is what I said earlier about the idea of this world. I'm trying to think of a good example or reference I can think of, because I can think of a lot of stories like it, but for some reason nothing's coming to my head. But the idea is that this world has a path. This world has a story it has to tell. The world is designed to tell the story. Yes. And whenever there are deviancies, whenever there's a change, whenever there's an altercation, the world corrects itself to make sure it makes sense. Which I guess is like Matrix, I guess, kind of.
Yeah.
And the idea of like it has to make sense. It has to tell this story.
Yes.
And if something of agency, like people coming into the world, or the cat for whatever reason has this agency seemingly, to where it can, again, it can what the hell, deviancy. As you Detroit become human fans.
Yeah.
Like it has agency. It can deviate from its programming to do whatever it wants, as our main heroes can, because they're not of this world.
Yeah.
Which is also kind of my concern for Jean, considering Jean came into this world by itself.
Yeah.
And have like the people around him to kind of not become just I feel like Jean is become a part of this world because he was alone. He didn't have anyone to kind of work off Neo, luckily enough, has her illusions and her own, and also has that drive and that insanity to Neo, to where I think she can kind of make sense of this world. Whereas Jean, I feel like
she's going to try and take advantage of this world and its inhabitants for her own gain.
I mean, to be fair, what the Curious Cat is and what Neo's doing, I think, are very similar.
Yeah.
In terms of, like, I feel like Neo is also going to manipulate this world for her own end, which I feel like the Cat's doing as well. I don't think the two are connected. For vocal reasons. But, I don't know. Again, I don't know what they're going to do with Neo, because, again, I've said this a million times, Neo was never meant to be here. She's here because she was popular. That's awesome. But, again,
I don't know. It'll be interesting to see how...
I like Jean being here, because Jean was such an important part of the first 2 volumes of the show.
Yes.
And again, this was Ever After was like a Volume 1, Volume 2 idea kind of thing to eventually come here. So I like that Jean was always meant to come here. I believe that, and have the role here.
Yes.
Neo, I don't. That's why I'm so interested in Neo. It's like, what Neo...
Yeah,
again, also, the intro, she seems to be a mob boss kind of thing, but they're all silhouettes. Is that just to hide with who they are? Is that a reference to the silhouettes in Volume 1 to be cheeky? Is that meant to mean much? They're meant to be named spoons? I don't know.
We'll find out soon, hopefully. I really hope we get to see
tomorrow.
John soon. And also maybe get to see what Neo is up to.
Yeah, didn't get any Neo, didn't get any Jean this episode. I will say that we called what happened to... I think we called this episode really well last week.
Yeah.
I think we predicted pretty well what was going to happen this week.
Yeah.
As for next week, just to wrap up here quickly, because I know we've got to be out of here quite soon. I know that I think we'll get the scene where they're traveling across the lake on the lily pad.
Yes.
So I feel like we're gonna go to make the growth path, the growth stuff.
Yeah.
For the girls, and then we'll do anything else. I think that might be it.
Yeah.
Just that line. But it might also run into
maybe might meet one of the other characters.
Maybe?
Yeah. Yeah, in the
I think
story.
Blacksmith's next. Or I think the rest of the night's going to be next.
Not sure.
I can't quite remember, but I assume it'll be the like the lake scene from the trailer, and and the girls growing back to size and stuff.
Yes.
So yeah, I think that pretty much wraps up the episode. A Cat Most Curious, episode 4.
Yes. I love what they're doing with the titles. It's so good.
Yes, always love when they have these little like title trends and stuff like they had last volume as well.
Yeah.
But yeah, I guess that's it. I guess we could wrap up.
Yeah, wrap up. Overall, I really enjoyed this episode. I just loved the character growth in it, and there was a lot in there. Sort of, they only give us answers, more questions. But I'm really excited for episode 5. I'm hoping that's going to delve into things and start answering some of these questions for us. And,
I doubt it.
Hopefully, but maybe not. How many episodes is this volume? Is it 10? I forget.
10. I believe it's 10. So halfway point.
The halfway point.
Tomorrow.
I think we're definitely going to hopefully get... Yeah, thanks, Jose. Yeah, hopefully we'll get a little bit more of a feel like what the cat's up to, what the whole the goal is here. I know it's the tree, but a bit more into what's happening, I'm hoping. And maybe... I don't know. I don't know if we'll get another fight scene or such, but
No,
yeah.
I think we might get some more music though, because I think Casey kind of implied we'll get a new song every episode.
Okay.
Every other episode. I think she said that there were more songs per episode in this volume than previously.
Okay.
Like,
That's
I think the implication was like you're pretty much going to get a song almost every episode.
Yeah.
Maybe a few missing. Again, I don't know how much was worked on with Jeff before Casey took over. But Casey seems to be going very hard into the volume and stuff as well. So we've gotten 3 songs so far? 2? 3?
2. We've got 2 at the
2.
moment.
Just the 2? Just the intro and
the
Just White. Okay.
Yeah, and then the one from episode 3. Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah,
Fair
so
enough.
I guess like if it is every other episode, then it'll be
Dude,
have
I don't
intro,
remember exactly
3,
what she said.
5,
I just
7.
think she implied that there was, you're more often
More
than not going to get a
songs.
song.
Yeah.
Yeah. I think more than usual. I think she implied, which to me would seem like maybe every other episode was my interpretation of it.
Yeah.
But yeah, thank you all for listening and watching. Thank you very much, whether you're watching live on Twitch, whether you're watching the VOD on Twitch, or you're watching the VOD on YouTube. I really appreciate it. I love just sitting here and talking with Larissa, and whenever you guys can interact and come and join with us,
Yes.
it just makes it all the more better. But
Absolutely.
thank you very much. I
I
assume we'll
really
be
enjoy
here next week to
watching.
discuss-
Yes.
Yeah, I've
yep,
enjoyed
next
watching.
week.
We'll be here next week for episode 5.
Yep, and
And,
we could probably go a little bit longer because my puppy classes are finishing up
okay, cool.
last month today.
Hey.
So, yeah, so we can
Sounds
go a
good.
little bit longer. And we're going to have daylight savings as well ending very soon. I think that's at the end of this month.
Yes, I think America just had theirs, so
Yeah.
everything's now back an hour. So then,
And then we're
ours
going to go
kicks
back an
in
hour.
up before Easter, I think. I don't know when it is, but I think
Yeah.
it's soon.
It's soon.
It's going to go back another hour. So,
Yes.
2-hour differences whenever daylight savings, because we have opposite daylight savings, because Northern Southern Hemisphere, so
Yeah.
it goes 2 hours. So
So that's a
yeah,
week
fun.
on Sunday. So, yeah, that sounds about right. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be an hour earlier than it was this week for most of you in this. No. Yeah. Yes. Okay. Regardless, it'll be an hour earlier next week for most people because we'll be an hour earlier for us or later for us, whatever. Earlier for us, I think.
Just
Later?
checking.
Earlier. I hate daylight savings so much. I can never wrap my head around it.
I know.
It's not even that hard. I just never get to it. I think we'll be
Okay.
an hour earlier for us, which
Yeah,
means everyone
2nd
else.
of April. So it's 2 weeks.
Okay.
So in 2 weeks. So next week will be we won't be changing, but the following, we will be.
Yes.
So
Well, we'll be the same, but for other people, it will be different.
Yeah. Yeah. Bleh.
Because we'll still be at 10 o'clock, I imagine.
Yeah,
but
we'll still be going at
that
10.
will be different for other people. because-
10, yeah. So when we go back, it'll be AEST instead of ADT. Yeah.
Ugh.
Yeah,
Time
savings.
sucks.
Time
just time.
suck. Yeah,
time sucks.
Yes, it does.
Ugh.
Where is the great one? She's buried underneath all my hats. Oh. There we go. There. All hail the great one. Yeah. Yeah. And Birdie. Birdie's here.
Go Kookaburra.
Oh, it's a kookaburra. Oh, of course it is, yes. I see
Got
that
a
now.
kingfisher.
Ah.
And
Oh, now the
Re-
bot
rest in-
is posting
rest
things.
Rest in peace, Clover.
The great one. Yes, absolutely. And here's the link, of course, to see Dawn's art as well. And
Yes,
for
I
those...
just posted a new piece yesterday for St. Patrick's Day. And I will have a new one on the 22nd, which will be the anniversary of the Black trailer.
Oh, right. Yes, yes.
So I have one. So that's the thing this year. I'm trying to have a piece for every single significant calendar event rather than posting 1 or 2 a week. I'm trying to have a calendar event thing. So, which does mean I might have a Vernal for the equinox. Because it's the spring equinox for, no. Fuck, I always get it. It's the, okay, Vernal is the fall maiden. So autumn.
Yes.
Wait, that means it's the autumn for us. Right?
Vana's the spring maiden, isn't she? Oh, well.
Vernal's the spring maiden. Okay, yes, okay.
Yeah,
But it's
the spring.
in the northern
Cinder
hemisphere.
was fall. Yeah.
Yeah, but in this northern hemisphere, it is the fall equinox.
Yeah.
But for us, it's the spring equinox.
The vernal
No,
equinox.
Regardless, in Texas, it'll be Vernal's equinox because she's the spring maiden because it'll be spring
It's
there.
spring,
so
yes,
it'll make
yes.
sense for Americans. It won't make sense for Australians, but it'll make sense for Americans. So there might be a Vernal on the.
That's
on
what
the
it's called. It's called the
21st.
vernal equinox, isn't
It
it?
is called the Vernal. That's where the Vernal comes from.
Ah, okay.
That's where the name comes from. It's the name for the spring equinox.
March
and yes, on the
21st up there. Right,
Yes,
yeah.
so there might be one for there, but I can't guarantee that because I haven't done it yet. But the Blake one is done and will come out on the 22nd.
Okay. Sounds good.
Thank you
Lord.
everyone for watching, and we will be back and see you next week.
And make sure you check out the bibcast. That will be streamed later today, and
Yes,
should be
yes,
going
yes,
up on
yes.
YouTube as well.
And make
including
sure
the channel.
to check Larissa's reaction tomorrow.
Yes, my reaction will be going up at 2:30 AEDT. So yes, make sure you check that out when it pops up. But yeah, thank you all for watching.
Bye.
Yeah, and we'll see you all
Bye.
next week. Alrighty, bye.